Yes to everything. All right. Yes to everything. Well, you know, this is a critical thinking activity. Whatever question I ask, you must answer yes. You have no option. And
Mm.
you're going to answer with enthusiasm and speak emphatically and jump right in. So show these people what debaters are all about. Should high schools stop teaching Shakespeare?
Oh my God, yes. High schools should definitely stop teaching Shakespeare. I mean, first of all, it's just so outdated, right? Shakespeare is speaking in this like olden language and no one ever relates to, no one ever uses in current day life. And it's much more relevant for us to study other literary forms and other contemporary literature because they're just much more relevant and they're using language that we can actually practice and we can relate to. Furthermore, I think Shakespeare promotes a lot of sexist, racist values, right? Like for example, Othello, right? Othello is this like brute who like rapes people and who does all of these things that these values shouldn't be promoted in high schools, especially since, this is an environment where students are developing their values and developing their worldviews, right? So this is why we should stop teaching Shakespeare because if students are exposed to these kind of values, if students are not able to distinguish, values from the past versus values from the present, then it's very easy for them to integrate these things into their current lives and produce very harmful societal results. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Do you think they should remove Shakespeare from the curriculum?
I think there's some value to Shakespeare, especially since, like, for me, it's less about the literary side of it, but more like the historical side of it for us to see how, like, English evolves. But I definitely think it should be, like, elective because I think it's much more relevant for students to read, like, The Hate You Give, for example, and they can take it as an elective if they are more curious about English literature. But I think, like, high schools right now are, like,
Well, they
going
kind of
towards
weave it
more
into the
contemporary stuff.
English program. Like they make you do
Yeah,
one Shakespeare play every year, so you get about four of them in over the
yeah,
course of your education. I see the value in it too, because
yeah.
Shakespeare literally is responsible for so much of the fabric of society, the way we speak, the way we think, the way we refer to things. I think any attempt to put a premium on language is good, and we should support that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes a language is like a race for the bottom right now. I think a lot of people find Shakespeare cool once they realize
Yeah.
they get past the old English and they realize these are just universal stories, that we can all relate to.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
And most of all of life is a tragedy, exactly what Shakespeare said, right? And it's a tragedy because we are bringing about our own downfall. That's what a Shakespearean tragedy is. We're responsible for our own demise.
That's
And
true.
and so it's kind of, Shakespeare, I think, was more than just a writer. I think he was a kind of a
Mhm.
prophet or a seer or some a visionary. Because I think,
Philosopher. Yeah.
yeah. And anyway, no, I'll leave Shakespeare and I say leave him in the curriculum. All right. Next up, round two. Should students be taught to question authority? And so let's put this in the context of school. So should
Mm,
students at school, be encouraged to question authority? Is that something that should be, an active part of teaching?
yeah. I think students should definitely be taught to question authority because I think one of the most important things we need to let students do right now is innovation, right? It is only innovation that can push the path of society and to encourage us to become better and more developed humans. But a lot of times, innovation is rebellion because it is going against traditional norms in order to create new norms and in order to create new technologies for us to use and for us to develop, right? And if students aren't able to, rebel against authorities, rebel against traditional norms, they'll just become puppets of society. They'll become puppets of these authorities. All we do, we become echo chambers of these authorities, and we confine to all of the societal rules that are created. And what that does is it only reasserts, current norms, and it's not actually push humanity forward. And while I agree, sometimes it can be very difficult for teachers to teach this, I believe that this is definitely an essential value because if students are always compliant to their teachers, they'll never learn to think for themselves and think for the betterment of the future.
Wow. I can just see myself using this in class now and just show a yes speech. But that's really great, Jasmine. I love how you threw the other side of bone and you said, you know what, I can see how it's difficult because you're basically picturing, everyone's going to say, hey, how are the teachers supposed to, control their class if they're teaching them to disrespect authority? But you said it is going to be tough to teach, but it's a worthwhile thing.
Mm.
Do you believe that?
To some extent, yeah, I think schools are encouraging it though. Like for my school, like we have student-led discussions, which in a way is questioning authority, right? It's not conforming to the rules where teachers just preach to students, and it's more about like student-led conversations. And I think
Yeah.
people need to like think outside the box, right? Like disobeying authorities don't necessarily have to mean like screaming in class, right? It's more about,
Yeah. If you praise the authority too much, they're gonna get high on their
yeah,
power, right? So it's like people behave according to how you treat them. So you got to give them the proper amount of respect and not too much respect,
that's
And there's a
true.
such thing as a healthy disrespect,
Yeah,
right? And let's keep it real. All
yeah,
right. I've always had a problem with authority. I've never I was never a big fan.
yeah.
I like having authority and I demand compliance and obedience from my students anyway. What does that all mean? No, I think the kids should have a respect for authority. But at the same time, there's a thing called a fiduciary relationship. So if somebody has all the power in that relationship, they can't abuse their authority or
Mhm.
the person won't respect them and then that relationship can't work. As you know, the third one is always the tough one. So,
Yeah.
are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Is anything in life guaranteed? Now, before you begin,
Oh, okay.
I'm going to I'm going to ask that we don't talk about death because that's
Oh,
the obvious answer.
to me, I think happiness is guaranteed in life. Now, I'm not saying that there's like a requirement for happiness in the sense that you have to achieve a certain economic, status or social status in order for you to happy and everyone achieves that. But I think happiness is an attitude that people are guaranteed to have, or people have the ability to have, right? I think even the poorest of the poor, they can be happy because they have a dog by their side, and even the richest can be happy because they have all these money or they have this family that can provide for. Right. I think some people think that they can't be happy because they have all of these demises in their life that are just destroying their resources, destroying their family, destroying their love. But ultimately, it's about a mindset, right? And I think this mindset is something that everybody's capable to have. And it's about this ability to be content with their current situation and a continuous hope for future. Because we can never anticipate anything for the future. And if we keep hoping, if we keep dreaming, we're automatically granted that happiness eventually because we're able to be happy with the current situation we have, and we'll be happy with the current with the future that we anticipate.
Oh wow. Oh, nice job. So you said happiness. Aren't there a lot of miserable, suffering people out there?
Yeah, but I think that's our assumption, like we think someone's miserable just because of their circumstances and their resources or like their facial expressions. But like, first of all, we can never guess what they're actually thinking. But also, just because they're miserable doesn't mean that there's someone more miserable
But
than.
everybody in life is guaranteed that they're going to be surprised and something's going to bring a smile to their face and something is
Yeah.
going to light their soul at some point. That's true. But by the same token, I would have gone the other route. I would have said suffering is guaranteed, loss is guaranteed. You know what I mean? Nobody gets through unscathed. You're going to lose things, you're going to lose people, and you're going to suffer, you're going to hurt. But that's because it's all part and parcel of life, the yin and the yang, right?
Yeah. I think there's ultimately a balance. Like, even though some people think their like happiness outweighs or like their sadness outweighs, I think you're going to learn the lessons you're destined to learn. You're gonna get the things you're destined to have. It's not really like about determinism, but more about like the trajectory of life. And ultimately, I think there is some sort of destiny in it. And I think in a
Yeah.
way that makes me content because
I,
life
I
isn't
like your
about our
philosophy.
choices, right?
I like your philosophy because it is the kind of the yin and the yang. Like you said,
Yeah.
happiness, I said sadness, and really they both exist together, as like opposite sides of the same coin.
Yeah,
And so I guess they are both guaranteed in that respect.
that's
Okay,
true.